Episode 53, Kolob, Secret Wives, and Masonic Power, Joseph Smith's Wildest Year. Welcome to the Hidden and Distorted History of the Church series, where we will be looking at the historical aspects of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons. In this series, I will try and inform those unaware of the true facts of Mormon history. Recap. Last time, Joseph released the Book of Abraham in installments through the times and seasons. He was at it again, creating yet another office of Register of Deeds and appointing himself in charge. Joseph completely shifted the Book of Mormon's location from the heartland of the U.S. to Mesoamerica after reading incidents of travel in Central America, Chiapas, and Yucatan. This time we expose Joseph Smith's shocking revelation about the true location of God's dwelling. And spoiler, it's not heaven. We'll watch as Joseph is fast-tracked into Freemasonry's inner circle, establish the Relief Society with Emma as president, and secretly take Marinda Nancy Hyde as his wife. All while her husband, Orson Hyde, is on a mission Joseph himself sent him on to the Holy Land. But that's not all. We'll uncover Joseph's attempt to secure Sidney Rigdon's 19-year-old daughter, Nancy, using Mirinda as a go-between. And finally, we close with Joseph compiling a list of so-called debts owed to him, squeezing every penny he can out of those around him. Part 1. Kolob, Home of God. In March 1842, Times and Seasons, edited by none other than Joseph Smith, published the first installment of the Book of Abraham, and with it came some of his most radical and controversial teachings yet. Forget the God of the Bible sitting on his heavenly throne. Joseph revealed that Elohim lives near the star Kolob, a cosmic body supposedly governing all others. According to Abraham 3:3, Kolob is the Great One, nearest unto the throne of God, the star that rules over all others. Smith went even further, explaining in Abraham 3:9 that Kolob had a special role in governing other planets within its system. This wasn't just a creative flourish, it completely rewrote the Christian concept of heaven and the nature of God's dwelling place. But Smith didn't stop with Kolob. The Book of Abraham casually dropped an even more shocking doctrine, the existence of multiple gods. In the explanation of Facsimile 2, Joseph described Kolob as the first creation and closest to the residence of God, but this celestial cosmology was only the beginning. According to Smith's revelations, creation itself was orchestrated by a council of gods, not a singular supreme being. This idea laid the foundation for one of Mormonism's most audacious doctrines, eternal progression, the belief that God was once a mortal man, just like us, and that we too could become gods. In April 1844, during the King Follett Discourse, Joseph Smith took the concept even further and blew the doors off traditional Christian theology. Standing before thousands at the church's general conference, which conveniently doubled as a memorial service for King Follett, Joseph dropped the ultimate bombshell. God himself was once as we are now and is an exalted man. If you were to see him today, you would see him like a man in form, like yourselves in all the person, image, and very form as a man. He didn't stop there. He outlined a path to godhood for every human being willing to follow the same steps God had taken. Here, then, is eternal life, to know the only wise and true God, and you have got to learn how to be gods yourselves. The same as all gods have done before you, namely, by going from one small degree to another, and from a small capacity to a great one, from grace to grace, from exaltation to exaltation. And if that wasn't audacious enough, Smith explicitly described a plurality of gods. In the beginning, the head of the gods called a council of the gods, and they came together and concocted a plan to create the world and people. This was a dramatic departure from Christian orthodoxy, openly embracing the idea of eternal progression and divine plurality. Joseph didn't just redefine salvation, he redefined the very nature of God and humanity's purpose. It wasn't about worshiping God, it was about becoming a god yourself. Part 2. Joseph's Masonic fast-tracking. In March 1842, Abraham Jonas officially established the Nauvoo Masonic Lodge, but Freemasonry had already taken deep root among the Latter-day Saints. Hiram Smith, Joseph Smith Sr., Newell K. Whitney, Heber C. Kimball, and John C. Bennett were all high-ranking Masons long before Joseph's initiation. Records from BYU's library reveal that during the lodge's organization meeting in December 1841, Hiram Smith was appointed senior warden pro tempore, while John C. Bennett served as secretary and Newell K. Whitney as treasurer. By the time the lodge was officially established on March 15, 1842, Hiram had risen to senior warden and worshipful master, some of the highest-ranking positions in the Masonic hierarchy. Joseph Smith wasted no time joining the ranks of Freemasonry. According to his own account in the History of the Church, Joseph officiated as Grand Chaplain at the lodge's installation ceremony near the Nauvoo Temple. He described the event, Tuesday, March 15th. I officiated as Grand Chaplain at the installation of the Nauvoo Lodge of Freemasons at the grove near the temple. Grand Master Jonas of Columbus being present, a large number of people assembled on the occasion. The day was exceedingly fine. All things were done in order, and universal satisfaction was manifested. In the evening I received the first degree in Freemasonry in the Nauvoo Lodge, assembled in my general business office. Unlike most Masons who worked their way through the ranks over months or even years, Joseph received all 3 degrees of Masonry within just 2 days, being made a Mason on sight by Illinois Grand Master Abraham Jonas. It's no surprise that with such aggressive recruitment, the Nauvoo Lodge soon faced criticism. Historian Mervyn B. Hogan notes that by July 1842, the lodge had been suspended for functioning against Masonic policies, primarily due to initiating more members than any other lodge in the area. Although the suspension was lifted in November, the lodge eventually split into 3 separate lodges to manage its explosive growth. The blending of Freemasonry, religion, and politics in Nauvoo was deliberate and strategic. Joseph and his closest allies consolidated power through secret rituals and new political connections, ensuring that Nauvoo's Masonic Lodge served as a powerful extension of Smith's growing empire. With Mormon bloc voting, Abraham Jonas, a key ally, was soon elected to the Illinois legislature, tightening the web of religious, fraternal, and political control that defined this period in Nauvoo. Part 3. Emma's Own Power Hold. On March 17, 1842, the Female Relief Society was officially organized in Nauvoo, marking a pivotal moment in both LDS history and the role of women within the church. Emma Smith, Joseph Smith's wife, was named its first president. This society, which began with the goal of providing relief to the poor and assisting in charitable endeavors, would later evolve into a powerful tool in the hands of the Smiths. While it began with seemingly noble intentions, helping the needy and aiding in community welfare, the Relief Society quickly became more than just a service organization. It became a centralizing force, consolidating authority and empowering women, though within the strict confines of Joseph Smith's religious vision. The position of president was not merely ceremonial. Emma Smith was granted substantial influence and control over the activities of the society, which also brought her into a position of power within the community. However, the formation of the Relief Society was not without controversy. In fact, it wasn't long before the society's actions, especially its involvement with the inner workings of the church, began to blur the lines between church authority and women's autonomy. The society would play a significant role in later years, especially under Brigham Young, as it evolved into a more structured organization that would become a major influence in the lives of Mormon women, though often serving to reinforce the patriarchal structure of the church. This move was part of a broader trend in Joseph Smith's leadership style, where he often used women's roles to further his religious and political ambitions. By organizing the Female Relief Society, Smith solidified Emma's position at the top of the community, while also exerting control over the women who would become some of his most loyal followers. It's clear that Emma's appointment as president wasn't just about charity. It was about control, influence, and the use of religious authority to bind more people, especially women, into the rapidly expanding Mormon network. Part 4. Marinda Nancy Hyde joins the plural wives list. In April 1842, Joseph Smith married Marinda Nancy Hyde, the wife of Orson Hyde, while Orson was away on a mission in the Holy Land. This marriage, like many of Joseph's polygamous unions, was kept in the shadows, a clear violation of marital trust, as Orson was unaware of the union happening behind his back. This added another layer of deceit and betrayal to Joseph's already complicated personal relationships. What makes this situation even more controversial is the fact that Nancy Johnson, later known as Nancy Hyde, had a tumultuous past with Joseph. Back in 1832, her family was involved in the infamous tar and feathering incident, where a mob attacked Joseph on accusations that he had been intimate with Nancy, who was only 16 years old at the time, while staying in their home. For more on the tar and feathering incident and the background surrounding it, check out episode 24 in my Timeline series. However, the motivations behind this violent episode are often misunderstood. Hayden and S.F. Whitney pointed the finger at Simmons Ryder as the leader of the mob. According to their version, the real cause of the mob's fury wasn't about Joseph's alleged affair with Nancy, but about money. Ryder and the others were reportedly enraged by what they believed was a scheme to take control of their property. The relationship between Joseph Smith and Nancy Hyde, compounded by her family's previous grievances, exemplifies the often complex and hidden dynamics at play in early Mormonism, where personal betrayal, religious zealotry, and economic power were all intertwined. Joseph's actions, particularly his secret marriage to Nancy while her husband was away, added fuel to an already volatile situation. Part 5. Joseph comes on to Nancy Rigdon. In April 1842, the intertwining of Joseph Smith's personal life and the growing tensions within the LDS Church took another turn. Marinda Hyde, Joseph's plural wife, approached Nancy Rigdon at a funeral and delivered a message. Joseph wanted to see her on special business. This seemingly innocuous interaction marked the beginning of an incredibly controversial and scandalous moment. On April 11, 1842, Joseph made a direct and bold attempt to obtain the hand of Nancy Rigdon, the 19-year-old daughter of Sidney Rigdon, one of the most prominent figures in early Mormonism. Smith's actions and justifications during this period would become infamous. In a letter to Nancy, he wrote, "That which is wrong under one circumstance may be and often is right under another. Whatever God requires is right, no matter what it is." This troubling statement reflected his willingness to justify morally questionable behavior through divine authority, a pattern that would come to define many of his actions. When Nancy refused his advances, she showed the letter to her father. Furious, Sidney Rigdon sent for Joseph Smith to confront him. When the two men met, Smith denied everything, claiming that he had never intended to make such a proposal. However, when Sidney thrust the letter in his face, Joseph admitted that he had indeed spoken with Nancy, but he claimed it was all a test of her virtue, a flimsy excuse that did little to absolve him of the grave nature of the situation. The confrontation between Sidney Rigdon and Joseph Smith over this matter adds another layer of complexity to the tumultuous relationships between early Mormon leaders. It reveals Smith's readiness to manipulate and justify his actions under the guise of divine command, and further underscores the moral ambiguity that surrounded his teachings and personal conduct. This episode also highlights the tension between Smith and the Rigdon family. Tensions that would only grow in the following year. Part 6. Joseph the Pickpocket. On April 15, 1842, Joseph Smith found himself deeply entrenched in financial matters, revealing a side of his life that was far from spiritual. According to his own records, he was busily engaged in making out a list of debtors and an invoice of his property to be passed into the hands of the assignee. This statement was not merely a casual note. It signaled Smith's financial troubles, which were growing more dire. As Richard L. Bushman notes, Joseph Smith's debts were substantial, estimated at $73,000 by 1842, and his financial practices were often criticized as being reckless. In the midst of his administrative and religious responsibilities, Smith declared his personal debts to total an astounding $73,066.38, an immense sum for the time, which raises serious questions about his financial management and personal integrity. The revelation of such a large debt paints a troubling picture of a man who had been heavily involved in ambitious and often questionable financial ventures, both personal and for the church. George D. Smith elaborates on this, stating, "By 1842, he had become deeply entangled in a web of debts totaling tens of thousands of dollars, largely stemming from his speculative ventures and business dealings. The debts would have undoubtedly added to the mounting pressures in Smith's life, pushing him deeper into complex and increasingly contentious dealings." Michael Quinn also highlights this interconnectedness, asserting, Joseph Smith's personal finances were a chaotic mess. His debts grew as he continued his speculative ventures, including the purchase of land and the establishment of businesses in Nauvoo. As Smith's financial problems became more evident, they mirrored the broader struggles facing the church, as the economic instability often bled into the lives of the early saints. As Brian Hales suggests, Smith's personal life was heavily intertwined with financial problems. The $73,000 worth of debt he recorded in 1842 wasn't merely the result of poor business decisions, but was compounded by his continued pursuit of land and other ventures, which often put his followers in precarious situations. This vast amount of debt was not just an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of financial irresponsibility that left both Smith and his followers in a precarious position. It also underscores the growing tensions between the ambitious spiritual vision of the church and the harsh economic realities it faced. Please watch for future videos, and thank you so kindly for watching. This is the Ex-Mormon Informant signing off for the day.